and guess what? The crack is going to be back. So, change of plans. I'm not fixing this like this. I'm going to replace this piece of drywall. I'm right underneath of the window. I have a nail right here. So this kind of tells me that the stud is really close to here. Why they would do this, I have no idea. I'm in the process of skim coating these walls, but I have this big crack in the wall right here that I need to take care of first. So today we're going to talk about how we're going to fix this, and we're going to fix it properly and make it a long-lasting repair. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get started. Before I start flaking any of this out of here and investigating too far, I'm going to take my razor knife and just give it a cut at the top. I don't want to go any further or disturb any more material than I need to. Now I want to make this about 6 inches wide, 8 inches wide, something like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and come down the wall with the razor knife the same way. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And I want to go all the way to the bottom. What this is going to do is prevent me from peeling any other paper or anything off that I don't intend to. For most of this, I am going to remove all the paper and pull it right down to the gypsum. I feel like you get a better repair doing it that way. Now that I've got that cut, I'm going to take my multi-tool. It's got this nice little pointy edge. If you haven't seen my video on this, I'll put a tag right up above where you can check that out. Pretty handy tool. And just start popping this out. Now there's tape right here is what it appears to be that is not very well secured to the wall. I kind of thought that might be what was going on, but we'll get into that in a second here. So that's exactly what it is. Here's the paper that's taping the joint. And there's a joint in the drywall right here. The paper is not secured the way that it should be to the drywall. And that's what's causing most of this problem. So the paper should have a way better grip than that. And if you find paint that is not well attached, just go ahead and scrape it off. Some of this is not wanting to let go easy, which is a good sign, really and truly. So I'm just going to use my hammer and help get some of this out. I'm going to take my razor knife and score this a little deeper, right through here. I'm just going to keep chipping away at this until I get it clean back to the lines that I cut with the razor knife, and then come through and pick away any of the loose stuff. So I've got everything pulled away from the area that I had planned on pulling it away from. However, here's part of my problem. there is a big gap between the two pieces of drywall that they kind of mudded in. And I can reach in there and pull that out. And what I've discovered is that there's no 2x4 behind this drywall. So this is extremely flexible. So even if I do fix this, my problem is just going to reoccur. And it's not bad because you can span a piece of drywall 16 inches between the studs without having to secure the back side of it. However, this is much greater than 16 inches. This is probably more like 36 or 38 inches of a span with nothing supporting it. So it would take nothing more than per se for the furniture to bump against this, and guess what? The crack is going to be back. So, change of plans. I'm not fixing this like this. I'm going to replace this piece of drywall. I'm right underneath of the window. I have a nail right here. So this kind of tells me that the stud is really close to here. Why they would do this, I have no idea. Shortage of material, trying to save some money, some time. Who knows? But this is what you wind up with when you take shortcuts. These are minor details that just didn't get followed. I was so hoping this could just be a patch, but I should have known better, because doing repairs in this home, I've discovered shortcut after shortcut after shortcut that I've had to go through and fix correctly. So when I saw these cracks, I kind of sort of thought maybe a shortcut and an issue because of that. I've also done a lot of work on the outside, new siding in the last couple years, so on and so forth. So there was a lot of beating and banging going on outside that may have caused this to get worse than it was, but it's never going to be right unless it's fixed right. So we're going to fix it right. What I want to do is go ahead and take this level, plumb it up where I know there's a stud, scribe me a line, and then I'm going to cut inside of that line just a little bit just to investigate what's there. I don't want to accidentally cut too much away, and because the stud isn't plumb or something like that, and remove what I need to hold the drywall I'm leaving into place. There should be two studs here, so there should be a stud here and there should be a stud right here, and we're going to check that out before we start peeling away too much of this. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now I'm going to take my oscillating multi-tool, just cut me a hole inside of this where I know there's not a stud. So there is the stud right there that I was hoping for. So I am just going to cut back to that stud, which should be on my line. I hope. I've found the edge of the stud that I'm looking for. It's about a ½ inch over from my line. So I'm just going to redraw a line because I'm thinking that it's just not plumb. Now that I have a definite line marked, I'm just going to take my multi-tool and cut right along it. So here you can see this was the edge of the drywall that they left. And it's hanging over probably a ½ inch on the 2x4 that it should be secured to. What they should have done at this point in time was just went ahead and put another piece of 2x4 right up against this one to have a land for this piece of drywall. But that is not what they did. Instead, they cut a corner and they made a mess. Now that I have this cut loose in its entirety, I'm just going to go ahead and knock it out of here. Just as simple as that. I've got this all opened up. I got the insulation pulled out, and I have a little bit of repair work to do to the framing. It's kind of obvious what happened here at some point in time. The size of the window was altered. Someone had cut this drywall out, closed this opening up a little bit, and then they just patched it in, and they did just a hodgepodge of a job. It's a horrible job. So I'm glad that I took this out and I discovered the issue. Now I'm going to go ahead, get some of this supported the way that it should be. Also, this kind of shows the age of the house. This house is not sheathed with plywood. It is sheathed by 1x6s, 1x4s, some various 1x size pine material. And to me, that would be very expensive to do, but apparently back in the day, that was not so expensive. So I'm going to get some 2x4s cut, and I'm going to lay one along the side of this just to tie this together real nice. I'm going to fill the gap here, and I'm going to fill the gap over there. Before I go cut my 2x4s, I just wanted to point out that the crack came all the way up to right here. The drywall was secured to this board all the way down to here, which would just be more support as to why it cracked. If the 2x4 ended here, there was no support for the drywall in here. So it was just a matter of a piece of furniture shoved up against the wall, pushed against the wall. Anything, even pressure from outside, would crack this. I have my 2x4s cut, and I just cut me a little notch out for this wire. I drilled a 5/8 hole and then just cut into it to get this cut out. I'm going to be using 3-inch Spax construction screws to hold all this in place. I have all my new boards in place. Now what I need to do is go ahead and cut some more of this paint away so that I can get my tape to stick to the drywall. I don't have much problems with worrying about running into the paper because there was a seam here and they've got the mud really thick, and the same thing over there. So I don't think I'll have any issue hitting the paper. And I also believe that I'll wind up with a better finish here because they really humped up the mud. I have all the paint removed from this edge on both sides, and it's time to get this insulation in. I don't know what happened to this insulation, but it's not quite what I had hoped it to be. It's not poofing up like it quite normally does. I'm sure it will over time, but it's R13. It's what we got. With the insulation installed, I'm going to get the drywall cut. I did go ahead and make me a mark right here on both sides as to where my wire is, because there's no wire guard here, so I don't want to put a screw right here and poke that wire. I have my drywall cut to height. Now I need to cut it to width. And I have a small gap on this side. I'm going to work off of this side. So I'm going to need to trim this side of it. It's very important that I keep it laying flat across the top of my baseboard register. I cannot really fill a gap there very easily, so I need to keep that tight. So with my drywall sitting flat across the bottom, I have about a 1/4 inch gap right here. So I'm just going to take a 1/4 inch mark off the bottom and bring it all the way to the top and trim that off and get me a little better fit right here. Now that I've got this side fitting the way that I want, and I just trimmed that off with a razor knife, got this gap a lot tighter. Still a little bit of a gap there, but it's no big deal. Now I'm going to go ahead and get my measurement from the bottom and from the top. Scribe the other side with my razor knife, break it, and get it fit in. After my measurement was made, I drew me a line on here, and I just scored the face paper of the drywall with my razor knife. Now just a little knee from behind, and it'll break nice and clean just like that. Then we'll use the razor knife and cut the back paper. And there we have it. It's just a little bit tight right here. So I'm just going to take my razor blade and kind of score down it a little bit and trim a little bit of that off. With just a little trimming, we got everything fitting good. We're ready to screw this into place. The other thing I've noticed is that the drywall is not secured through here. There's no screws whatsoever holding that to the 2x4, which could also have led to some of these issues. I'm going to be using 1 5/8 inch drywall screws to hold this in place. I've also made me a reference line down here for my stud in the center, and I've marked out where my wire is just so that I don't have a brain fart and put a screw through my wire. It's important when you put these screws in to not break the paper on the drywall. The paper is the strength of the drywall. If you break through it, you'll want to put a screw next to it and do not break through the paper. It's very important. With everything screwed in, I'm ready to get some tape on here. I've mixed up some 45-minute mud. That does not mean that it's ready to sand in 45 minutes. That means you have approximately 45 minutes of work time. This will allow you to overcoat faster than a bucket type mud, and it gives you enough time to work to do taping and do stuff like that, especially on a small repair like this. So what I want to do is I want to fill these little gaps as good as possible. I'm just working out of a small bucket here, not my typical mud pan. So I just want to fill all these gaps in. And then I just want to lay a fairly thin, I've mixed this up thin, kind of like yogurt. It's easier to squeeze out from underneath the tape because we don't need a lot of mud under the tape. All we're trying to do is basically glue that tape in place. And you don't have to try to be real fancy here. We're going to go back over it. So we just want to leave a light coat . already looks better than what I had before I started. I'm just going to use paper tape, and I'm going to get me a nice straight edge here at the bottom with the razor knife for my starting point at the bottom of the wall. I want to center it on the seam. Just kind of press it into place with your finger. Get it centered on that seam. Just going to press my 6-inch knife against it right here. Cut it off. Now I'm going to start at the bottom and just kind of get it stuck into place. Pressing it into the mud nice. Then I'm just going to pull it up. If you get any wrinkles like that, just come back to the top, pull it down, pull those wrinkles out. Now I'm just going to pull off any excess. Make sure that that tape is tight. Push tight into that mud. If there's an area that you see that's not adhering, go ahead and pull the tape back a little bit. Add a little mud in that area and do it again. That's exactly what we want. We gotta let that dry, and then we'll be ready for another coat. And for these screw holes, it's just the same thing. One quick swipe over them. You don't have to get too much in there. We will be going over them again. These up here I'm not too worried about. My trim will be covering them anyway. And there we go. I'm gonna get that other side done. While the other repair is drying, I also had a crack in the wall right here. And once again, this is some drywall repair work that just was not done very well. The drywall compound was put over the top of existing painted drywall, and they did not sand it. It was a high gloss paint, and it just didn't stick. All the tape came loose and a big crack developed. So I am going to just mud over that. It'll be much like what we've done here, and tape that crack back up. It is an uneven seam, which makes it even worse, but we'll get that knocked out. I also have this corner damage to repair. I have the bead molding secured. It's been just run into with furniture a few times, and it just needs to be fixed and straightened up. No big deal. That will, at this point in time, just get a coat of mud over it, and then it'll all get smoothed out with the skim coat. Now that the mud is dry that I used for the taping, I'm ready to get another coat on it and start to blend this in. This section right here, the wall is more pronounced than the drywall, or the wall is proud of the new drywall. So I've got a little bit of a transition here, or a lip. If you run into that, just go ahead and lay your mud in and just put your tape in on an angle, and everything will dry up and be just fine. And if you wind up with an uneven surface like this, it's best to pour your mud in this direction. First I'm going to come straight up it, and then I'm going to come this way. I may wind up skim coating over this entire piece of new drywall. What I'm using here is some 45-minute mud. I've already got my first skim coat on the walls. So this mud will adhere to that well, and it'll also adhere to this well. With this first coat, I am not looking for perfection. I'm just looking to get it covered and get it started. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. I'm trying to stay more on this side of the tape than this side, because I do have a little bit, you know, this was finished, so it's a little bit thicker than the new drywall. It's important to do that to get a good blend. Whenever a drywall joint is finished, it creates a hump in the wall. It's very important that the blend be a wide blend, meaning 8-10 inches outside of the tape on each side for a butt type joint, and where the two pieces of drywall fit together that are indented and intended to be taped and put together on their length edges, then that's a little different. You can get away with a little narrower patch. Now that I've pulled my mud up on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and go right over this, and I'm going to do it from about the center here, and I'm just going to start really tight and then lessen the pressure on the knife and tilt it down and come right over the top of it. Once I have all that on, I want to do the same thing now. I just want to come back over. I can still see the tape here. I don't want so much mud on top of the tape that I'm creating a bigger hump than I need to. I'm applying a great deal of pressure and just pulling that off. So I've got a little ridge here, which is okay. That'll get blended in. Everything else I'm fine with. I'll just let that dry. I'll come back and get another coat on it. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing here. Because this side is more even, I'm not going to have the issue where I have to pull it up again like I did that side. This is laying on really nice and I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm really happy with that. I'm going to let it dry. Probably only need to let it go for about an hour. I can scrape off some of the high areas and get the next coat on. The first coat of mud has set up enough to get the second coat on it, and that'll probably be the last coat that I need. What I want to do is just take my multi-tool and go around and just knock down any of the ridges that I see or the humps that may cause me issues putting this next coat on. For this second coat, I've mixed the mud a lot lighter, about like yogurt. The first mud that I put on was about like mashed potatoes, much heavier. I'm going to pull the same direction from the center out, and this time I'm going to apply it a little bit heavier right to the edge. To smooth it, I'm laying my knife down more with a firm amount of pressure. I'm not pushing on it super hard. I'm not flexing the blade, but I'm pushing it hard enough that it doesn't chatter and that it smooths it out. The reason I don't want to push it too hard is because there is a low spot right here. And if I push the blade really hard, I will actually just keep creating that low spot rather than filling it. Now on this far side, just to get my blend, I'll run the mud up like what you just saw. I'm going to get a little more right here. Now I'm going to go over it one more time with a clean knife. Get all this cleaned off the knife. And now I'll go over that one more time. Now I'm going to do the same thing back this way. And the other nice thing about using this bag mud is how fast it firms up once it's on the wall. So I'm already able to use that as a guide. It's firm enough that I can't press any indents in it at this point in time. There it is. I'm going to let that dry completely. It'll need a little bit of sanding and we're going to be done. With this repair completely dry, I'm ready to sand it. And I'm using a sponge sander. It's medium on one side and fine on the other. And the reason I like to use these sponge sanders is if I've created a hump or something like that in the drywall, I can better feel it when I run over the top of it. When I'm using a sanding screen on a hand block, I don't feel that hump as well. And even if I can just isolate it and then use the sanding screen to knock it down, that's a great assistance to me that this provides that the sanding block doesn't. I'll sand out all my imperfections with the medium side, and then I'll flip it over to the fine side and go over it and give it its final detail. With the sanding of this complete, I'm ready to finish skim coating this wall and getting this texture knocked out of it and get it all smoothed out. I'm going to do a reveal video on this room, and what you need to do is subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss anything. I'm going to highlight all the areas that I repaired, along with the skim coating of the ceiling. And remember, the techniques that I've shown you in this video are not the same techniques that a professional would use. I am not a professional drywall finisher. The techniques I use is what I've discovered works for me. Thin coats, multiple coats. It takes me a little bit longer than it would take them, but I get the same results. If you'd like to get an amazing shirt like this, I've put a link down in the description to my store. You can get t-shirts, sweatshirt, hats, coffee cups. Check it out. I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. That's all we got for this time. Remember to always respect the power of your power tools. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those two videos that's going to pop up next to me, and we'll see you soon.